Part 6, Offices of the Genital Glands. One of the important results of the investigations of the ductless glands which have occupied the attention of advanced physiologists of recent years, and one which has been combated by certain of the more orthodox physiologists for some reason, is the discovery that the genital glands are true ductless glands manifesting internal secretions of certain substances apart from those primarily concerned with the primary reproductive processes. This discovery has afforded a scientific explanation of the facts which for ages have been asserted by the occultists and other heterodox thinkers, i.e., the facts concerned with the processes of regeneration. In the preceding section of this book we have called your attention to the fact that there is a disposition on the part of certain ultra-conservative physiologists to question even the fact that the genital glands are true glands at all. These orthodox scientists strive to maintain the antiquated idea that the genital glands are not in any true sense glands, for they do not produce any chemical substances peculiar to themselves, but are simply the portions of the body where those cells are formed from which the next generation arises. But, as you have probably noticed, these same ultra-conservative scientists quite as earnestly maintain that the use of the term a gland in connection with the suprarenal capsules, the pituitary body, and the pineal body, is incorrect and confusing. This, notwithstanding the fact that science has not only discovered the truth that these ductless glands undoubtedly do manifest important internal secretions, that such secretions have been widely and successfully employed in therapeutic practice, and that the physiological effect of such secretions upon the physical processes have been definitely determined by experiment. Advanced modern physiology has at least tentatively advanced the theory that the genital glands, particularly the testes and the ovaries, not only produce the primary reproductive cells, but that they also secrete other substances of a high potency which are believed to exert a strong influence not only upon the growth and development of the embryo after the ovum has been fertilized by the sperm, but also upon the growth and development of the body of the individual in whose genital glands they have been secreted. The testes and the ovaries are found to manifest true internal secretions of this kind, which secretions meet the requirements of internal secretions, which are stated as follows. Internal secretions are substances elaborated in ductless glands and discharged directly into the blood. They are substances secreted by animal organs or tissues which preside over the development, growth, reproduction, and the chemical regulation of the body. In section 4 of this book we have called your attention to quotations from several authorities which express the belief of such thinkers and investigators that the internal secretions of the genital glands are discharged into the blood, thereafter to perform certain important offices in the growth, development, and vital processes of the individual. For instance, these authorities says that, it goes back into the circulation ready to form the finest brain, nerve, and muscular tissue, and the unexpended sexual energy is employed for the building up of a keener brain, and more vital and enduring nerves and muscles, and the sexual glands are useful for the physical well-being of the individual, through the vital stimulus exercised by them through their peculiar secretion upon the processes of development and nutrition, and the seminal secretion has a wonderfully eminent value, and if retained is absorbed into the system and adds enormously to man's magnetic, mental, and spiritual force, and the sexual energies may be transferred to the other departments, to which they contribute largely in the life and power of each, and in the production of general vigor, and the sexual department of a continent adult seems to be a sort of storage battery of vitality, a veritable reservoir for surplus energy. In addition to these positive statements, the following quotations will serve to illustrate the strong and rapidly spreading belief along these lines among thoughtful scientific investigators and observers. Professor Kingsley says, the interstitial cells carry secretions in men which pass into the blood. They apparently cause secondary male characteristics such as, among other things, hair on the face and change of voice at the close of boyhood. They also govern most female characteristics. Professor Keith says, the interstitial gland has as much to do with the growth, in certain particulars, as the pituitary gland has in general bodily growth. All the changes we see in children after they begin to grow, which bring to prominence racial characteristics, depend upon the action of the interstitial gland. If the gland is removed, or remains in abeyance, the maturing of the body is prolonged or altered. The effect upon the physical and mental characteristics of the lower animals, and of men and women, which is produced by disease of or the removal of the genital glands, is so striking that it is impossible to escape the conviction that these glands internally secrete substances which are appropriated by the blood and which directly affect the physical and mental condition of the individual. For instance, all are familiar with the changed mental and physical condition of the cock transformed into a capon, of the young stallion transformed into a gelding, of the young bull transformed into a steer, of the normal human male transformed into a eunuch, the transformation in each of these cases being caused by the removal of the male genital glands. The transformation is followed by marked physical and mental changes. The body loses its male characteristics, and tends to become sluggish, heavy, slow. The eyes lose their sparkle. The voice changes its character, courage is lost and ambition disappears, inertia and docility are manifested. There is a general heaviness of body, mind, and emotional nature. A similar mental and physical change is manifested in female animals, and in women, who have been deprived of their ovaries. It has been noted that the seed of plants and of animals are composed of a highly concentrated food substance, this in some cases being also true of the outer covering surrounding the seed proper. This is nature's provision for supplying the developing young life via form with highly concentrated food material until it is able to draw its supply of food from outside sources. Man instinctively recognizes the high food value of such material when he seeks and finds an important part of his food supply in the seed substances of plants and animals. In nuts, fruit, berries, grain, and in eggs, he finds this valuable seed substance. This substance is supplied by the action of the secretions of the genital glands or sexa cells of animal or plant, and such office is undoubtedly a part of the varied functions of the sexual organism. Moreover, there is evidently something more in milk than the ordinary food materials contained in it. The above, and many other discovered facts, have gradually led thoughtful investigators and observers to the conclusion that in the genital glands of animals and men there are secreted powerful and subtle chemical elements which are, in part at least, absorbed into the blood and thence carried to all parts of the system, there serving to energize, invigorate and strengthen the cells, organs, and parts of the body including the brain and nervous system. Some have gone so far as to hazard the opinion that old age is chiefly due to the lessening of the supply of these secretions. From general hypothesis to particular theory, this thought has preceded, and then, as usual, the special theory has sought expression, manifestation, and exemplification in actual experiment. It was the natural, logical evolution of this thought which caused the early investigators among modern scientists to arrive at the conclusion that, if the genital glands actually do produce these internal secretions, then if these secretions could be introduced artificially into the system there should result a marked and definite physiological change. This was accompanied by the belief that certain abnormal physical conditions caused by a deficiency of such secretions might be remedied by the supplying of the particular elements contained in them. From this basic position the experiments of the early investigators proceeded. Brown-Séquard was the pioneer in this experimental work. Although he was aided by the earlier investigations of Berthold and Bernard. Brown-Séquard, an eminent physiologist, the professor of experimental medicine at the Collège de France, in the year 1889, announced the startling results of certain experiments conducted by him over a period of several years. He started with the basic hypothesis that, all glands of the body, whether they are excretory canals or not, give to the blood useful principles, the absence of which is felt when the glands are extirpated or destroyed by disease. Upon this basis, he reasoned that from his experiments he had demonstrated conclusively that human life, and physical and mental vigor, could be prolonged by means of the administering of a hypodermic injection of a fluid extract in which the testicles of sheep had been macerated, this extract being the afterward famous Brown-Séquard elixir. The value of this discovery, and the reputation of the discovery, were seriously affected by the sensational announcements of the newspapers concerning the elixir of life, and by the ridicule and abuse which came as the result of the reaction of the disappointed general public who had been led to expect a miracle, the boon of eternal youth and physical immortality. This unfortunate reaction, and the resulting ridicule, operated so as to bring disfavor upon the discovery and the experiments which had led to them. The real merits of the theory and experiments were lost sight of for a long time. Later, however, Interest in the discovery was reawakened by new experiments which served to substantiate them, and at present Brown-Séquard is regarded as a pioneer in the now important branch of medical theory and practice. A leading reference work says of him and his work, recent experiments serve to substantiate the views and statements of Brown-Séquard. His famous elixir, consisting of an extract of lamb's testicles, he administered to himself, and reported marvelous stimulating and rejuvenating effects. While other observers failed to substantiate his somewhat extravagant assertions, it was recognized that there undoubtedly existed a powerful oxidizing and stimulating element in these organs, and physiologists were led into wider fields of investigation. Science has not as yet determined the exact way in which the internal secretions of the genital glands produce general physical and mental changes in the individual, but the following quotations from authoritative reference works will serve to indicate the general direction of scientific thought on the subject. It is known that several, perhaps very many, if not all glands have also the power of secreting substances to which Starling has given the name of hormones. These pass into the blood and cause other glands to secrete. Thus, an acid in the duodenum causes it to secrete offices of the genital glands, a hormone to which the name of a secretin is given. This passes to the pancreas and causes increased secretion from that gland. It is probable that the pancreas, in turn, also secretes something which activates a ferment in the muscles. It is evident therefore that the connection between the different glands of the body is a very complicated one, and that the effects of a drug which acts upon any one of them may be of a very far-reaching character. It is by no means impossible that all glands have a double or even triple function, and that sometimes the external may be even less important than the internal secretion. On this point, however, we have but little definite knowledge, and a great field is open for future research. At the same time, there are many indications of the importance of an internal secretion in popular treatment. It now seems probable that all glands which have what may be termed an external secretion, a broken bar, have also an internal secretion, so that while they are pouring out one secretion from the ducts into the intestine or external air, they are also pouring into the lymphatics, and thus into the blood, an internal secretion. In fact, a splitting appears to take place in the process of secretion somewhat resembling that which takes place in the formation of a toxin and antitoxin. Another authoritative reference work gives the following interesting statement concerning the mutual affinity of certain secretions for certain other glands, and of the mutual antagonism observed to exist between others. The suprarenal glands have been shown to be stimulated by, and to work in harmony with, the thyroid and pituitary. They antagonize the pancreas. Especially in the control of sugar secretion, they inhibit the thymus and secretin, and stimulate the testic and ovary. The thyroid stimulates and is stimulated by the reproductive glands, cooperates with the hypophysis, stimulates the adrenals, and inhibits the pancreas. Thyroid secretion in excess stimulates the intestines. The posterior lobe of the hypophysis stimulates the smooth muscle of the uterus and intestines, cooperates with the thyroid, stimulates the mammary, and is antagonized by the ovary and pineal body. There is said to be an regenerative power antagonistic action between it and the pancreas. The pancreas controls and is controlled by the adrenals, and is assisted by the parathyroids. It is stimulated by the secretion formed in the duodenal mucosa, and is apparently inhibited by the thyroid and the hypophysis. The spleen is believed to have a stimulating influence upon the stomach and digestion generally, and to furnish a stimulant to the muscles of the intestines. When to these actions and cross-actions are added those of the reproductive glands, the pineal body, the thymus, parathyroids, mammary, and liver, it will be appreciated that the subject of the internal secretions is one of no little delicacy. One of the most significant hints along these lines so far offered by science is that in which is pointed out the close affinity existing between the genital glands and the thyroid glands. Again, in this connection, may be pointed out the close affinity between the brain and the genital organism, on the one hand, and the close affinity existing between the brain and the thyroid, on the other hand. Here we seem to have a triangle of sympathetic action, or affinity of process, the three respective sides being represented by, 1. The brain, 2. The thyroid, and 3. The genitals, respectively. We need not dwell here upon the close affinity between brain and genital glands, or upon their action and reaction. This is too well known to require extended discussion. You know that excessive mental work will weaken the genital powers and that excessive sexual activity will weaken the brain action. These are matters of common knowledge and general experience, needing no elaboration or argument. As for the other phases of the triangular affinity, we may refer, in the first place, to the well-established relation between the thyroid and the genital organism and, in the second place, to the result of deficiency in the thyroid secretions in the direction of producing impaired brain action and even idiocy. Treatment of mental weakness by means of thyroid extract has proved quite successful. There is here seen to be a close relation of brain, thyroid, and genital glands. An authoritative reference work says, under the influence of thyroid gland these symptoms, those of myxoedema, disappear, and the patient is frequently restored to a normal condition. When the thyroid gland is absent in children, not only is the expression of the face dull and heavy as in the adult, but the growth both of body and mind is arrested, and the child remains a stunted idiot. The effect of the administering of thyroid gland in such cases is marvelous, the child growing in body and becoming healthy and intelligent. In the case of the thyroid, the function of the gland appears to be to prepare a secretion which is poured out into the blood and alters tissue changes. Whatever may be the true and final explanation, however, it is a fact proved by many experiments that extracts prepared from the secretions of the genital organs frequently produce marvelous physiological and psychological changes in the organism into which they are injected or otherwise administered. Since the time of Brown-Séquard there have been many earnest investigators and experimenters along these lines, publicity being avoided, however, for obvious reasons. Since the unfortunate Brown-Séquard experience, there have been many cases reported in medical journals of the reinvigorating effect of administered extracts of testes or vulva. A reference work conservatively states, of the reproductive glands, or orchidic, testicular, extract, while not enjoying much favor, has been shown to promote oxidation in the body, and has been given with varying results in hysteria, neurasthenia, locomotor ataxia, epilepsy, and insanity. Ovarian extract is similar in its action, though less powerful. An intensified effect is obtained from extract of the corpus luteum. These substances have been used in sclerosis, in the nervous disturbances following oophorectomy, and during the menopause. Great caution is advised in their use. However, the most striking proofs of the effects produced upon the general physical and mental being of the individual by the action of the internal secretions of the genital glands are those which have been furnished during the past few years by the surgical experimenters along the lines of gland transplantation in animals and in human beings. The records of this phase of modern advanced surgery read like fairy tales, and the leading practitioners in this branch of therapeutics run a great danger of suffering as did Brown-Séquard by reason of sensational newspaper reports, and the subsequent reaction of a disappointed general public. The public is being led to expect miracles, and is likely to become indignant when it is told that the whole subject is still merely in the experimental stage, and that nature's rigid laws still are operative.